Always a pleasure to welcome in our daily Faceoff prospect analyst, Stephen Ellis, to the show. And let's kick it right off, Stephen. Halfway point of the year. Give me your Calder pick. Give me who else is on your ballot.
Well, right now, for me, number one, it's Lane Hutson. And I think just the stuff that he's able to do as a defenseman is incredible. I wrote before the season started, like, don't be surprised if we see him go down to the Laval Rocket, because he's such a unique player in the way that he moves the puck, the way he outskates his opponents and forces them to have to really react to his plays. But clearly it's not been a problem for him. He's been able to adjust so well. He's playing heavy minutes. I think as other teams start to figure out how to play against him in the next couple of years, we'll see how good of a defenseman he is. But he's truly one of my favorite players in the NHL, because just no one brings the entertainment value from the point like him outside of maybe Quinn Hughes or Cale Makar. Then you look at the other guys here. Obviously, Celebrini's got a huge case here. He missed some time, didn't miss a beat at all. That adjustment going right from college as a freshman right into the NHL, clearly not an issue. Matvei Michkov's been near the scoring, the top of the scoring for a long time here. And of course, Dustin Wolf, the best goalie in this draft. So this is probably one of the more fun Calder classes that I've ever paid attention to. And I think it's because, Lane Hutson might be one right now. Celebrini was number one the month before. Michkov was number one the month before that. Like, it's changing so much. And I think that's going to be really cool heading into the stretch run.
Yeah, no doubt. And my ballot looks a bit different than yours. I have Celebrini 1, Hudson 2, and Dustin Wolf 3. I guess my big thing is, why do you think, and I ask this knowing the historic sort of pace that Hudson's been playing at as a rookie defenseman and what kind of conversation he's putting himself in, but why do you give the nod to Hudson over Celebrini?
I think just because, with the way Hudson's playing, you look at how much better Montreal has been in the last month. And I just wrote about it earlier today, where once Hudson really started to get hot, he was playing 22 minutes a night. The Canadiens went from being second last in the NHL to just outside of a wild card spot. So he's been just as important as pretty much anybody in that lineup, whether it be Cole Caulfield, Nick Suzuki, and to be playing 22 minutes a night, 21 minutes, whatever it actually is, as a defenseman. Like, obviously we saw what Brock Faber did last year, but when it came to Hudson, I think there's always been those questions of those defensive issues, and it really hasn't been as big of an issue as I think a lot of people thought. And, you look at Celebrini's numbers, obviously so important for the Sharks, but you also look at the Montreal's been actively been way better since Lane Hutson started to get hot.
Mm-hmm. So as you think about the second half of the year, and you just talked about how much this race has changed already, who has the chance to really push themselves into the mix?
It's always tough for a goaltender to go out there and win the Calder Trophy, but I think Dustin Wolf's got a huge argument here. Like, when I'm looking at this top four, like, it's really, really close. And I think with Wolf, you see those numbers there. He's putting up just a lot of the same performances that we saw make him so valuable in the AHL. And early in the season, he wasn't getting a ton of tough starts. Like, he played against like Chicago or San Jose and things like that. But we saw him shut out the Florida Panthers. We saw him go out there and beat the Canucks. Like, he's had some tougher assignments in the last few weeks. And I think that's really important as they get really more comfortable with him. Obviously, you look there, will the Flames make a change in goal and then make Dustin Wolf that undisputed number one? But I think for me, not only is he, like, my prediction was at the halfway point, he'd be that number one goalie, and he's playing like a number one goalie right now. And again, goalie prospects are my favorite because it's so hard for them to stand out. But what we're seeing from him this year is true greatness already.
Yeah. Let me throw some numbers at you quickly. Heading into last night's game, Wolf had started the last 3, 4 of 5, 6 of 8, and 8 of 11. He was 6-1-1 in his last 8. And his last 5 games, he had a .940 save percentage. So some incredibly impressive numbers from Wolf.
Yeah, like, we were always wondering how he was going to transfer over. He's a smaller goalie, but clearly it hasn't been an issue. And it's a good time to be watching goalies because you look at what Askarof's doing. We're still kind of waiting for Wallstead to see what he's able to do. Sebastian Kosa's coming up, and we might have 2 goalies taken in the first round of the 2025 NHL draft. So this is a good time to be watching goalie prospects.
Not to hijack the Calder talk, but if you're the Flames, and I know because Steven watches like Kazakhstan Hockey League, whatever that is, what would you do with Devin Cooley in the AHL, who's been lighting it up?
that's a guy that hasn't had a ton of NHL experience, right? So it'll be interesting, but he's obviously someone that could be a decent backup, a good depth piece for any team maybe needing some extra goaltending at the deadline, or if they do move on from Dan Vladar, I think he's ready to get the look because he's looked so good. And Calgary's had some really good goalies the last couple of years in the AHL. Oscar Dansk is another one, but I think Cooley's been able to kind of really elevate his career at a level that we didn't see when he was in the San Jose organization.
Maybe not best rookie of the year, Stephen, but what about most underappreciated or maybe least talked about? Who's someone that's maybe flown under the radar that you think's having a really good year?
Well, it's Emil Heineman, and obviously today's news definitely makes it a little tougher to look at there. But you look at the fact that this is a player who was brought in. He was going to go out there and bring the energy, make himself tough to play against. You know, he's not a massive player, but he's strong, and he's really difficult to beat in the corners, and he's got that two-way responsibility. But he's also on pace for, had he not missed, if wasn't going to miss time, he was on pace for 20 goals this year with Jake Evans, and just made a really good line. I believe that's their fourth line. And that's a thing, you know, Jake Evans is looking so good, but I don't know if he would be as successful if it wasn't for the way that Heineman's able to take some of that responsibility away from him. And he was a top 10 rookie for me this year, just because he's been one-on-one matchups defensively, like he just does it all so well. And the fact that he's scoring at the rate he was, I don't think anyone saw that coming, because he's never been a goal scorer at any level. Like he never got double-digit goals pretty much throughout most of his career in Europe at the pro level. So, you know, it's been cool to see.
Last one for you, moving outside of the NHL, another sort of made-up award for you to give us. Your top prospect of the first half. Who's someone, and they can be draft eligible, they can be drafted already, but who's someone who's maybe changed your opinion of them in the first half?
Well, it's definitely Kieran Walton, who I mentioned as one of my biggest snubs off of Team Canada. And it wasn't like he kind of came out of nowhere by the time of Canada's camp happened, but he's the third top scorer in the OHL this year. And you look at the numbers last year in his draft eligible season, 43 points. He was a later pick as a result. This year, he's already destroyed that with 69 points. Nice. And he's just continuously going at a rate here where we're going to be talking about 110, 120 points on a Sudbury Wolves team that's been missing one of their best offensive threats all year long in Quentin Musty. So a really good pickup. He's 6'6". He's a good skater. He's a power forward that I remember watching him in his OHL draft year. It's like, man, if he could figure out how to score and get that offensive ability unlocked, he's going to be so good. And right now, the Winnipeg Jets are looking really good for taking him.
Yeah, is having a hell of a year. Those numbers are crazy. Stephen, as always, appreciate your time, man. Thanks for doing this. And we'll chat next week when I think you're going to have an updated draft rankings.
Yep, they come out Friday. Can't wait.
Perfect. Thanks, Stephen.
What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you need to be hitting the subscribe button right here at Daily Faceoff. Exclusive interviews and analysis from our hockey insider Frank Seravalli, fantasy updates from Brock Sagan, and a daily live show at noon Eastern, Monday through Friday. You don't want to miss any of the fantastic content, so hit that subscribe button.